Hi, I'm Mary Poplin from Imagineer Systems, and today we're going to be going over Mocha Pro and how to use the Remove and Insert tools to replace a logo. So let me go ahead and open my shot here. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and load our footage just to a default file, 25 frames per second. And we're going to go ahead and play this so you can see what it looks like. Now you can see we have this complicated sort of remove we have to do over a logo in order to replace it with something else. Now we're going to replace this with the Mocha logo, so let's get started and show you how we do that. The first thing we do is that we're going to go over and zoom in, and we're going to take our X-spline tool and we are going to draw a spline around our little logo here, and we're going to track this. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and hit our grid and surface tool on so that we can see what our track looks like, and we're going to adjust that to where it's more or less aligned to the logo so that we can tell what's going on in our shot. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to track translation, scale, rotation, shear, and perspective and hit track forward. Okay, now the reason I showed you this perspective is so I can show you when you don't need to use it. So you'd think that you would need to use perspective in this shot so that you can get the motion, but you actually need to turn perspective off and use shear instead, and you get a much better track. The reason for that is there's a lot of information change that's happening in the shot, and when you tell Mocha to track perspective, it will mistake that information change for a tilt that's not happening. So we're going to go ahead and increase our accuracy and just track forward one more time, and then we end up with something that actually looks really nice. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Adjust Track, and we're going to try to fix the 1 or 2 pixel drift we have going on. So I'm going to take my Surface tool, and we're going to zoom in, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the Adjust Track tab, and then I'm going to move all 4 of these reference points to points that I can find later on in the shot. Now it's important that I move these reference points to locations that are always going to be on screen for the entire shot, and that I can use well. So you see how that turned red? That means it's not good data to continue using the C, so we're going to use the E instead. Now, we're going to use Set Master All to make those the master points, and we're going to scroll to the end of the shot. Now at the end of the shot, what we're going to do is we're going to try to auto-align our little key points. Now the problem is this is a very soft looking image, which means we're probably going to have to use our best judgments and manually align the track where it needs to be using a combination of auto adjust and the nudge keys. So the nudge keys are down, up, left, and right, and the little corner icons are the icons for your points that you're using for your adjust track. So we'll just navigate between all of our points and make sure everything looks good. Adjust everything as needed. So we're just going to tap it, and then we're going to scroll and see if it looks good. And you can use your thumbnail view up in the left corner to see whether or not you're drifting or whether or not you're staying right on that corner. It looks like we're doing a pretty good job. So I'm going to go ahead and save this and go to our track. Well, it autosaves. Now, from here, what we're going to do is we're going to start getting into the Remove tool. Alright, from here we're going to go ahead and we're going to zoom in, and we're going to duplicate our layer. Okay, so we're going to duplicate our layer. We're going to call this the logo remove, and we're going to call this the logo background. And now what we're going to do is we're going to adjust our logo background shape to be larger than our logo remove shape, because this will be how we're removing the object, and then the smaller shape is going to be what we are removing. Now from here, just going to scroll through, make sure that that track is still good. It is. And now we're going to go to our Remove tool. I'm going to select my smaller shape, and now I'm going to go ahead and zoom in so you can see what we're doing. What we're going to do is we're going to hit Create Clean Plate down here in the Clean Plate clip, and what that will do is that will save this file as a TIFF file. So in Photoshop, I can go ahead and open that up. Alright, so now that we are inside of Photoshop, we're going to go ahead and we're going to open up our clean plate. It's going to be inside of our results folder in our project folder. We're just going to select that and hit open. And now when we select it, we're going to use a combination of the paint tools inside of Photoshop to get rid of this logo. So we're going to use the clone tool, and we're going to select an area, and we're going to go ahead and heal that right over the top. Alright. And so I'm not going to make you sit through me painting all of this, but what we're going to do is we're going to use a combination of the clone tool and the heal tool, and we will have a clean plate done momentarily. The idea here is that you're going to need to do as nice and as accurate of a cleanup as you can. Any artifacts you have in your plate will be passed on to Mocha. So now we're going to hit save now that we're done, and we're going to go ahead and jump back over to Mocha. Now in Mocha, we're going to go ahead and we are going to zoom out so you can see what this looks like. And now we're going to start to finish this remove. And I'm going to show you some things first so that you can see what the different options do. So we're going to select our layer that we want to remove, and we're going to use clean plates exclusively. Then we're going to use interpolation illumination mode. That's going to actually do a weighted lighting change over the inside of our roto, much like the heal tool works. Now, I can see that I'm getting sort of a hard edge on my shot, and you can see that it is fading from one side to the other. But what this means is that I'm going to have to do another clean plate, okay? Because it just doesn't look right here in this square section. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to zoom in. We're going to zoom in and we're going to look at our shots. Then we're going to go to undo our render in this current frame at the end of the shot. And then we're going to adjust our roto. Now, what I'm doing with my roto is I'm actually going to round this off and make it softer so that I have more room to work with, because the idea is I'm going to want to do most of my paint work inside of Mocha, but I'm going to finish my shot in After Effects, so I want to make sure I have a nice shape in order to do that with. So we're just going to round out these corners and pull them out just very quickly so that when we do our compositing, we're not going to leave this on the plate when we combine our roto our remove with our original plate. So using our roto. So now from here, I'm going to go ahead and scroll to the end of the shot. But first I'm going to go ahead and re-render this shot so that my new larger shape is incorporated into my renders of my actual clean plate that we're making. So from here, we're going to go ahead and let that finish rendering. And then we're going to zoom into this section because we still don't think that looks right. We're going to go to undo render in current frame. Okay, and then I'm going to hit create clean plate again because I want this as original to the original plate as possible. So we're going to go ahead and open that in Photoshop, and now we're going to do that same thing where we go ahead and we paint this shot. Again, we're just going ahead and using the heal tool and the clone tool, and we're going to paint out all this text and make it look right. You notice when you use the heal tool that it pulls light and dark information into the other areas of the shot. This is kind of how interpolation lighting modeling works inside of Mocha. So we're going to do some final touches here, and then we are going to jump back over to Mocha. So back in Mocha, what we do is we go ahead and we go to Edit Clean Plates and we load in our second clean plate. Now in this case it's still going to be in the results folder on our desktop. From here we're going to actually widen this menu so that I can see what frame it is. Now this says that it's frame 15, so what I'm going to do is in frame number I'm going to type 1 and 5 to make that 15 so that we put the shot back where it's supposed to be. Now from here I'm just going to hit re-render, and this should give me much better results. So we'll make sure we're selected on that layer, and we're going to go ahead and scroll through and show you our previous render, and from here we're going to hit render. Alright, once we are rendered, we go ahead and we check our shot to make sure that we look good. And in this case, we're just going to go ahead and save our file, and then we're going to export rendered clip. Now what export rendered clip does is this allows me to export my renders as any sort of clip that I like. So we're going to go ahead and save this as a QuickTime movie. So I'm just going to make sure that I name this properly. We're going to call this clean remove so that I know what this file is when I load it into my After Effects project, and we're going to hit save. Okay, from here we go ahead and we hit OK. And now we're just going to go ahead and force a keyframe every frame and hit OK. Now that will render our QuickTime for us. And then from here we can actually render out our insert. So in our insert, what we're actually going to do is we're going to go ahead and use our original shape and our original surface tool. Let's just go back to our original clip and show you what that looks like. So here we're going to turn our overlays on, and now we're going to move in so that we can see what's going on. We're going to go to an insert clip, and we already have the logo in here by default. So I'm going to go ahead and align that using my surface tool, which means I select the surface tool and then I pull it up or down, and the insert goes ahead and gets transformed depending on whatever it is that I'm doing. So in this case we're just going to go ahead and align this till it looks right. And then we're going to actually use something in here that I think is really underutilized, which is the Show Mesh tool. But first, we're going to make sure that our surface tool is aligned how we want it. So as long as it looks natural, I'm feeling pretty good about it. From here, Like I said before, we're going to use our Show Mesh tool. We're going to zoom in, and I'm actually going to turn on Show Mesh, and then I'm going to take the subdivision down to level 2. At level 2, I can start to adjust this broadly along point sections. So I'm going to squeeze this in a little bit. We're going to move the Mocha logo alongside the actual folds of the cloth itself. And we're actually going to animate this movement once we're done. We're going to go ahead and align everything. And then at the end of the shot, we're going to adjust it, and then we're going to animate between those two sections. So let me show you what that looks like. What that looks like is going ahead and scrolling to the end of the shot. And what we do is we find a point where we think it's animating, and we look at the way that the object is deforming, and then we try to make our best guess as to what the animation should look like between that object deforming. So we're going to adjust these corners until they look like they fit more or less with what's actually happening with the contour, and then it actually animates between those 2 points. Okay, so we have our grid warp that actually animates between our 2 keyframes over time. From here, it's as simple as going ahead and zooming out so I can see what it's doing, going to my Insert tab. What we're actually going to do is we're going to go ahead and check Motion Blur on so that Mocha renders the motion blur for us, and we're going to go ahead and turn our overlays off and hit Render. Now Mocha will render this insert with its own alpha channel, the warp that I applied using the grid warper, and its own motion blur. And I can then take that into After Effects and do whatever I like with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and save our file. So you're going to File, Save, and then I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to minimize Photoshop. I'm going to jump over to After Effects. Alright, so inside of After Effects, what we're actually going to do is we're going to go ahead and import our footage. So we're going to import our original footage off of the desktop inside of our little project folder here, which is Replace Logo. And we're going to load our clean plate that we rendered, and we're going to load in the original plate itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the original plate, and I'm actually going to go ahead and make sure that my settings match my clip tab in Mocha. Okay, so inside of Mocha, it's 25 frames per second and a 1:1 aspect ratio, 1920 by 1080. So we're going to go ahead and load that in, and then we're going to drag our clean plate that we've made in Mocha over the top. Okay, now we're going to jump back over to Mocha, and we're going to go ahead and take the roto for this section, okay, and we are going to use that to combine our clean plate back over the top of our original plates. We use Mocha Shape Data for After Effects. We copy that to the clipboard. We go back to After Effects, and then we make sure we're on our first frame. We hit Edit, Paste Mocha Mask. Now what that will do is that will actually paste our Mocha Mask in as a spline instead of as an effect, and I can go ahead and adjust my feathering and have more control over that sort of data. So we're going to zoom in and see what that looks like. And it's looking pretty good, but I think I want to do some minor adjustments. What I think I want to do is I want to feather it to 10 pixels. And we're going to see what that looks like. It's trial and error, right? Compositing is you see what it looks like and then you adjust. So we're actually probably going to go ahead and take the grain away from this. And we're going to take the grain and we're going to remove the grain by going to Effect, Remove Grain, but I want to show you what that looks like soft-wise, okay? Because we're actually applying the grain to the insert of the remove. So we're going to go ahead and hit Remove Grain. What I like to do is adjust the preview range over the object I'm trying to remove the grain on, and what you can see is that that's going to totally remove our grain with default settings. So we don't really even need to mess with that. We're just going to put it on Final Output, and that looks pretty good to me. Okay, from here we're going to go to Effect, Noise and Grain. We're actually going to match the grain. Alright, so using Match Grain, we're going to come into the Match Grain tool, and we are going to go ahead and move our preview range over. Okay, oops, it looks like I moved the actual layer and not the inserts. We're just going to drag this over so that we can see what the preview is. Okay, and this is just for speed of using the effect. We're going to come in here to Tweaking, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to adjust these settings over here, your intensity, your size, and all that sort of stuff. We're going to use that information to match the plate's grain, which means that we're going to play with the various levels of intensity, size, and softness and channel the channels individually in order to get the best grain that we can get. So we're just going to go ahead and play through that and see how it looks. Looks like that matches pretty nicely, but it also looks like I might want to blend my shape a little bit better, in which case I can do that. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to do some final adjustments on our grain, and then we're actually going to come over here and we're going to use a mask expansion to expand this, oh, by about, let's see, 10 pixels, and then we're going to do a 20 pixel feather to make this even more of a soft, non-noticeable blend between the original plate and the mocha render. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. We're going to align this to just go ahead and fit to the comp. And then from here, we're going to go to preview to final. Okay, so this will actually apply our grain matching to the rest of the shot. And we're going to go ahead and hit play on this and see how this looks. And I actually feel like that looks really nice. I feel like that's moving appropriately to how it should be moving. So from here, what we're actually going to do is we're going to make sure we don't see anything that needs to be adjusted, and then we're going to load in our insert, and we're going to actually put it over the top of this composition. So we go back to our clip bin, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to Import, File, and we're actually going to go to our Results folder, and we're going to pull out our Insert Render, which is going to have its own alpha channel just like this. Okay, so we're going to select that. We're going to make sure that we have selected it as a TIFF sequence. Okay, that's really important. We go ahead and hit Import. All right, and we're going to actually use it as a pre-multiplied mat with its own alpha. And then we're going to go to interpret footage, and we're actually going to make sure that this is 25 frames per second. It's actually not. This says 30, so we have to make it 25, and make sure the aspect ratio is 1 and hit OK. Okay, so from here we just drag this over the top of our comp, and it works like a pass, so it actually is perfectly aligned. So I can then, from here, start blending mode this into the shot and decide how I want it to look. Now with soft light, you can actually see the light and the darkness, and we're going to knock this down in opacity to about 50%. But I think what I actually want it to look like is a multiply. Okay, let's just see what that looks like. Yeah, I think we want to keep it at 50%, because that way it blends with the shot. Now from here, we're going to go ahead and zoom in and show you what that looks like. Now it looks like our logo right over the top of the jacket. Now I'm going to go to Effect, and I'm going to just add some grain to this so it's not quite so crisp. Even though that will compound with my other grain, I actually want to break up some of the hard edges of that line on the edge of the mocha logo so that it doesn't look bad. So we're just going to go ahead and go to Final Output, just add some normal grain. So let's fit this to the comp and see what we have and render it. Well, it looks like what we have is something that looks appropriate, looks like it belongs in the shot, and doesn't look like it's sliding. So from here, what I can do is I can just save my project. I'm going to make sure that I save my After Effects project into my folder. Now, I didn't save it before I started this, which is a big no-no, so always make sure you save your files so that you'll have backups if you ever want or have any problems or want to go back to it. So from here, we're actually going to go to Composition, and we're going to go to Add to Render Queue. Okay, and then when we're in the render queue, okay, we're going to adjust our settings. So in the render queue, we're going to go ahead and decide what kind of file name we want. So we're going to click on our file name, and we're going to save our file into our little folder here. And inside of our folder, we're just going to go ahead and call this our final render. I wouldn't normally work in a pipeline by calling something final, because I've seen something called final 02, final ultimate final 03, but this is a simple shot. So from here, we're actually going to go ahead and change our settings. We're going to make sure that our settings are accurate in the way that we want them. Then under our output module, we're just going to go ahead and save this as a QuickTime animation compressed format. And then from here, we're just going to hit render, and we'll have our final shot. So it really is that simple, guys. Now, if you have any questions, I am Mary P. at Imagineer Systems. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope that you found this very useful, and have a wonderful day.